Um, Welcome everybody. How are you doing today? It's so very nice to have you here. And today I wanted to speak a little more about one particular theme from our upcoming 3-week intensive, which begins this Sunday. And that theme is the difference between pain and suffering. The focus of our intensive is what we really want is to be here. And what does that mean really actually in a moment? What does it mean to be present? We hear that so many times, just be here, just be present. What does it actually mean in the moment? And especially when past is here, what does it mean to be present? And that difference between pain and suffering is a very interesting difference. It's actually a very powerful difference. And it takes quite a refined discrimination to be able to see the difference, and experientially, that might not be so clear to everybody. And maybe to be even more clear, I would say the difference between pain that naturally arises here and pain that is caused by resisting what is actually present in a moment. I don't know if you realize that we spend often a lot of time in pain that is caused by resisting what is actually present. If you have these repetitious thoughts, feelings, emotions, if we have these repetitious responses to situations, if we find ourselves wishing over and over and over and over again for something to be different, when you see these thoughts, but I don't want this, or I want this, or I would like that to be different, I can't be here, I can't do this, I can't deal with this. All of that points to our engagement with thoughts, with mind, with the past. And in that engagement, we do experience pain. We often experience quite intense emotional or mental, sometimes even physical pain. However, that pain or experiencing of that pain does not bring us any relief and does not bring us any resolution. It sometimes feels like when this kind of pain arises and we allow ourselves to go with it and to move with it, it seems like we are doing something, we are experiencing something, we are moving something forward. However, in reality, it's just a repetition of the same mental, emotional, physical loop, which arises, exists for a while, we experience it, it subsides, and then it arises again, but there is no resolution in that. In order for there to be a resolution, we would have to apply discrimination. We would have to, and discrimination, remember, so different than judgment. We will have to apply discrimination, and that means we will have to look very directly at the types of thoughts that arise here, or thoughts that arise here. And we would need to be able to apply this very simple direction, what we really want is to be here. Or the very simple direction, don't believe anything for freedom. And so often when we do that, it's like magic, right? That pain that was caused by resisting what is, or by engaging with the arising thoughts, subsides, not even subsides, but it disappears altogether. And its disappearance may sometimes reveal, just a hint or just a small amount of a real pain that sometimes happens, living in a body, human condition, we do experience pain, mental, physical, emotional pain at times. But that pain, when it's felt, when it's experienced, it really brings us back to rest. So in that way, it's very, very powerful. We have these different tools. We have discrimination. We have what I really want us to be here. We have inquiry. We have the ability to notice what is present on the level of sensation, and all of that, brings us to growing our capacity and ability to be present in a moment. And another element, which you might know already, is, what I call the story, which is the interpretation of facts. When you see these repetitious stories, ideas, that come up, and that, we even did that at some point, we could have our top 10 favorites, and you will be surprised that many of these stories are actually very similar for everybody. Our favorite stories, our favorite ways in which we engaged in the mind, interpretation, we interpret what's going on. Once we are in that interpretation, we are lost in that. There is no resolution there. So one way or the other, discrimination is very, very powerful. And I want to invite you to join me in this 3-week intensive, so that we can practice this together, and experientially, that you can learn and know the difference between pain and suffering, the difference between pain that naturally arises here and the pain of engagement with the past, or resistance to what is actually present. So I'm very much looking forward to our time together, and if you are enjoying these videos, please like and share and subscribe and comment. It really helps for these videos to be more available for many, many more people to enjoy this.